Everyone's kind of here. There we go. Thank you. Lots of exciting things to talk about, and I promise you we'll have lots of time to talk with the people at our table. But good evening. Thank you all for coming. I see some familiar faces and I see some new faces, and I am just thrilled that you have chosen to come out tonight to be part of this process. As I said from the beginning, and I'm going to continue to say, this process is being driven by the people who come to these meetings. So the fact that you're here means that your voice is going to count as we are going through this process and determining what our facilities are going to look like. So with that, if you've been here, you know that we are working with TDA. They are pre-bond architect, and they are kind of walking us through this process of planning our master facilities, or helping create our master facility plan, I should say. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to lead us tonight. Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire with TDA. A lot of you we've met, some of you we haven't. So anybody that it is your first time here, just so you know, we have these little cards over on the table where you sign up. They have a QR code that points you to where you can leave feedback as far as feedback or questions, but they also have a lot of information that we've covered in previous meetings. Just for the sake of time, we don't usually recap too much from the last meeting. It's just sort of a summary and high-level points. So if there's anything you want more information on, I'd point you to that website, and we'll do our best to answer questions throughout. So for tonight, we did want to do a brief recap of last meeting so people understood sort of what the activities were. We're going to look at results of polling from some of the homework that we sent out. So hopefully we're able to look at that and give some feedback there. We're going to have some group discussion, report out, and discuss next steps. I threw myself off because I took the little packet, and now I don't know if I should look back there or look down. So anyways, recap of the last meeting. Last meeting, we looked at some sites. We looked at both district-owned properties, limitations on those, but also opportunities with those, and then also ones that were not owned by the district, but were potential sites. Of the existing sites, the most favorable was the South Elementary School site. On that site, most people were leaning towards looking at a new elementary school rather than a new high school, just because there are some space limitations there. The elementary school seemed like it would work more favorably there. For the non-district owned sites, we went through pros and cons on each of them. There were also some additional sites that people in the room requested we look further into. So Tech Park, property near Kent Tuscaroras, and then property around the surrounding bus garage. We're still looking into those, so we're not going to delve into those in more detail tonight, but at the next meeting, I think our goal is to have some more information as far as some of those pieces that we're studying. We also, so the small group activity was discussing those pros and cons and then reporting out. We also did some live polling, which we're going to look at just the results of those, which if you were in the room, you saw the results. But we asked a few sort of larger questions, one of which we're going to dive into in more detail tonight. So of the people in the room, each of these came with pretty strong responses. Anything that's like 65 to 70%, we consider a really strong response of one direction. So this first one was just looking at if pre-kindergarten is moved out of Quaker Dome, do you believe the Board of Education should move there and repurpose or demolish the Front Street School? So this was very clearly, yes, we should explore that option further, which we will be doing. Where do you feel the pre-kindergarten should be housed? And this was saying basically, yes, they all should be housed in a new elementary school building. Cheryl, if there's anything you want to add to it, feel free. I'm glancing over at you. Do you believe the Welty New Philadelphia High School building should be renovated or replaced? And overwhelmingly, people felt it should be replaced with a new building. And then where do you believe sixth grade should be housed? And this is the one that didn't have quite as strong a response as all the others. The majority was saying they should be included in with the elementary school grade levels. But there was still a pretty big group that also was leaning towards maybe they get included in with the middle school. And there were some people that were undecided in the room. So, I'm gonna
Yes.
kick it over to Cheryl now.
Thank you. So because, that's why we put that question last, because we wanted to show, the contrast between the previous questions. All the other questions we asked had a very, very strong preference and response. This one, is still strong, but not as strong as the others. So tonight, we're really gonna focus on where do we think the sixth grade should go so that we can continue to move forward and refine and define our final master plan. So we sent out some homework, and again, a reminder, it's really, really important that you sign in and give us your email addresses and your name, because we are going to continue to do this. We give you a lot of information at these meetings, and one of the initial feedback we got, I don't know if the gentleman's here tonight, was like, oh my gosh, we're only here for an hour and a half and we have to make these big decisions and try to digest all this. So we're trying to make it easier for you, give you some time to think about what we're presenting before we ask you to vote and make decisions on our pathways forward. So very important we have your email. So we sent out some homework after last presentation 2 weeks ago. And we had 3 questions. And the first question really focused on your preference of master plan. We have spent the last few months focusing on 3 short-listed master plans that began with 8 that you all developed. And all along this process, Master Plan 4 has been continued to be the strongest preference by far. But we wanted to put it to the test one more time. We expected, our minimal hope was to shortlist from 3 plans to 2. But you can see here up here on the chart for the participants who took the survey, nobody voted for Master Plan 1 or 6 in the survey. Somebody commented on preferring Master Plan 6, but for some reason they didn't vote on it. So there was 81.58% preference to Master Plan 4 and 0 to Master Plan 1 and 6. That just validates the previous data and surveys and pulses that we've taken on your preference. So I think it's pretty clear, where our base master plan is going. Other, which is in the orange at the bottom, had 15.79%. The bulk of that was the same master plan, but the difference or the comments were, as you can see on the side, switch the 6th grade from middle school level to elementary school. So there was a few other comments maybe about other master plans, but the majority of them was just changing where 6th grade went, which further augments and increases actually the stats for the preference of Master Plan 4. So we were really excited to see this. You guys have been very consistent with that data and those responses. The second question and the third both piggybacked about sites that we talked about last meeting. So again, as Claire was just talking about, South Elementary School, in your feedback, the majority of the people said they would prefer an elementary school on that site. Some of them said the middle high school should go there. We had about 56%, that's the green bar at the top, that said they preferred South Elementary School to be the new elementary school site. Now, again, just like with the previous question, when you look at the others, a lot, which was about 23%, that said, other, please specify. It said we probably should look at some other sites to see if it's possible, but if not, I prefer the South site for the new elementary school. And a few people said, no, I prefer it for a new middle school and high school. But overall, the data shows that South is a preferred site for one of the new school buildings, leading to more of the elementary school facility. Lastly, question 3 was related to a site for the middle school and high school complex. We know there's challenges, but we thought, we could still work with the existing site, seeing if we can reach out and expand into other areas to increase our footprint of that site, or we could continue to explore other sites. And the majority, it was 71.99% So 72% in that yellow bar said to continue to explore other sites. You gave us great data. There's additional feedback here in the comments from the survey. And as Claire mentioned, we're taking all that data in and working behind the scenes at trying to see what can come to fruition with these. So please don't think all the work you did was for naught. It just takes some time, and we want to keep moving with the other elements and components in this overall master plan process. So it's moving in the background, and we're going to come back to this soon. So with that said, oh my gosh, less than 15 minutes. We want to spend the focus again talking about sixth grade population, which seems to be one of the few things left that we need to discuss on the base plan. And then there's new layers we're going to move into as we progress further, talking about LFIs, auditoriums, additional things to layer onto the master plan. Site acquisition, we eventually will come back. But let's figure out where we think sixth grade should go. And I would like to ask how many elementary school and middle school teachers are here tonight? So I think we have enough to put one at every table. Is that, even if, 7 or 8. We have 7 tables, so maybe we can consolidate this table into that. We want to talk about, at each table, where we think sixth grade should go and why. And we really need to look on our educators on this because they have the hands-on experience, they have the training and knowledge and insight to really lead this discussion. So we'll give probably 30, 35 minutes or so for each group to talk. For the new people, we have roundtables discussions. We write down our thoughts. We pick a representative to speak and report out to the large group in front about your thoughts and your recommendations. And then homework will be in the next week to do our first polling on where we think sixth grade will go so that you have time to digest everything that's been said tonight. So with that said, 30, 35 minutes, we'll check in with you for a report out in a few.
Everybody heard but I think they will circulate the future. I know, they all started talking. You're on live now?
Take this away.
I think that they talk about right, like all these things.
I know I don't have a Ryan voice, but I'll try. So,
Let me start.
table,
Yep.
I can't remember your first name, middle school principal.
Ricky. Hey, here we're gonna start. We didn't write much down.
Didn't write anything down.
We had something on the board, but I had to tear it off, so.
Wait a minute, gotta turn on my recording for you. Okay?
All right, so in our group, we talked about sixth grade kind of being an outlier for most of our building. And the reason for that is sixth graders don't take high school classes. A lot of our seventh and eighth graders take high school classes. Sixth graders don't participate in school athletic events. Seventh and eighth graders do. Mr. Furby just came over and told me we have a sixth grader that's scared. We got school dance on Friday night because eighth graders are going to be there. It's like a whole different group of kids in the building compared to what seventh and eighth graders are like. You know, they dictate a lot of our scheduling and stuff in the school as well. Not all reasons to say that they don't deserve to be there. I mean, they're fantastic kids and they do a good job. But when you look at the differences between them, there's a big difference between sixth grade, which I taught for a long time, and then seventh and eighth graders, you know, that are in the building throughout the time. So when we looked at it, we think probably should move them down to an elementary setting. And, you know, and not like putting sixth graders with preschoolers or first graders, you know. Most of the buildings are set up where they have separate wings, so it's like pre-K 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6s together in a different spot. And you know, one of the things that we looked at was like licensures of teachers. So I don't know how familiar some of you are with how the licensures are set up, but there's a pre-K to 3 license, and then a lot of teachers that teach 4 or 5 get sort of a generalist license, so they can teach most things down there. Our teachers in the middle school can't teach every subject unless they're an old school 1 to 8 or a K to 8 license. So most of them are hired to teach 2 different subjects, math and English or science and social studies or however it's set up. High school kids, most of our degrees are integrated degrees, so you can teach 7 to 12. So like for myself, I'll just give myself as an example. When I got hired in the district, I got hired as a 6th grade teacher. Well, my license was 7 to 12. So I had to go back to college and take more classes to teach a 6th grade level and then pass certain tests to be able to teach 6th grade. So when you look at some of the licensure areas, you know, the 7 to 12 doesn't pigeonhole you into who can do what, because we have teachers who teach science, social studies, and you can offer that to all the different groups of kids. More so than when you're like 6th graders that are floating around down here. We have teachers in the middle school now that are 7, 12 licensures that we can't ever move lower than 7th grade. So it kind of limits to who you can teach and what classes you can offer to certain kids. So when we looked at that stuff, we thought the best idea was to move things down to an elementary type building. Gets them away, gets the kids that can participate in things around the school more involved in those things. So that's what we did.
So you mentioned like 7 through 12 is common for licensure. In elementary school, you did a couple different grade bands, but where does 6th grade typically fall
So
in
6th grade would fall in the middle school. It's a 4 to 9 licensure area.
Okay.
So it's an odd one down there, but yeah. It falls in the middle school.
It's always a conversation in
Yeah.
every district we work with about where does 6th grade go? So it explains why.
Any questions on our stuff? All right, good.
John?
Can I go next?
Hey, don't listen to her.
No, I agree. That's my husband. All right, so I do agree with my husband. Our table agreed, we think that the 6th grade belongs with the younger grade groups. A couple reasons, so we did talk about one like con, so I put it in red, is that someone at the table said when the 6th graders are kind of like the oldest in the building, maybe they have some behavior issues, like they get the big head, like we're running the school. But you know, like you said, if you have that separation in a new building where there's like younger kids over here and they're more with their age group, maybe that kind of alleviates some of that potential behavior type problems. I'm not an educator, so I don't speak to if that's true. I'm just, you know, relaying some thoughts. But I did kind of bring up The flip side of that, if they're the youngest kids in the school, if you've got 12-year-olds with 18-year-olds, there's just as much potential for issues, right, as if we're saying older kids with preschoolers. So it's kind of like either way you look at it, you could have problems. So there's also opportunities either way in both of those scenarios. We pointed out that the sports are kind of run, like you said, the 7th and 8th do their own thing. 6th grade's usually still considered youth sports. I mean, we just got a flyer today for the new Philly Youth Soccer is kindergarten through 6th. I know softball, same thing, all these sports parallels, that's kind of where they seem to fit there. And it seems to work for those kids to be in those groups. I always like to ask, why are we where we are? The 6th grade was put in the middle school not because of any data-driven reason. They were put there because there were constraints on our buildings at some point. Buildings were closed, and to house everybody, we had to put 6th grade in the middle school. That's not where they were at some point. Maybe it was 20 years ago. I don't know the exact year that happened, but that was not a decision made because it was a conversation that was had, or here's what the data shows. That was just what we had to do to make do with where we were. We thought some positives, again, they'd have leadership opportunities. They could have those moments that are like a rite of passage. You can have, like you said, the dance is scary because they're with 8th graders. But if they're the 6th graders and it's a 6th grade only dance, that's like a rite of passage when you reach that age, that you can kind of build them up. And then I graduated from TCC, so I just kind of pointed out, there's already a parallel in our community. TCC had to consolidate, I think it's been almost 10 or 15 years ago now, but when they consolidated they took 2 elementary buildings that were a pre-K to 8 and a high school. When they consolidated, they are now a pre-K to 6 building and a 7 through 12 building. So that just also seems to fit, even within our own community, it's like a microcosm, right, of our bigger community. And that, we've already seen it done and it seems to be working well for them. So that was just something I kind of came to mind when we were having this conversation.
Just while Mr. Mauer puts up our group, I want to add an addendum to Mr. Neff's licensure. Currently, the licensure is what he said, but students in college now getting their teaching licenses, it's K to 5, pre-K to 5 actually, 4 through 9 generalist. In the old days, we had to pick 2 subjects. Now it's just 4 to 9 general, all 4 subjects, and then 7 to 12, pick a subject area. So a little bit of just some changes that'll be coming with new teachers as they start coming up through our system.
So that's the first thing we did as well. We looked at licensures to see what made sense for teachers for where they would be placed, depending on if you moved 6th grade to elementary or the middle school. We found that with the licensures, 6th grade is still kind of the outlier grade, just because of PK to 5, and then 4 to 9, and 7 to 12. So we kind of started with that route and didn't really come up with anything that was going to make or break our decision at that point. Couple pros there about 6th grade down at the elementary. Like Ricky said, the 7 to 12 sports aligned. A lot of our New Philly sports start at 7th grade, like 6th grade at all of the youth and Pee Wee sports as well. We kind of talked about 6th grade maturity as well. You can move 6th grade down to the elementary because maturity-wise, that might be a better fit. But then you could view 7th graders as being immature because they're the lowest of the grade levels too at the 7 to 12 building. So we didn't really think that was going to be make or break as well there. We were looking at a number about having a pre-K to 6 building. That's 8 different grade levels in one building. And if you're looking at student number and logistics for, we're going to eventually be looking at, in and out and pickups and busing and all that. That could pose a problem for the elementary having 8 grade levels there, and potential to expand preschool. So preschool is always that you never know how many students are trying to get into preschool. So with a pre-K to 5 building, you could allow for preschool to be able to have more growth than having 6th grade eating up some of the space at the elementary level. And then we just thought overall huge student number potentially with pre-K to 6 building. And Mr. Williams was talking about curriculum a little bit. The new state curriculum guidelines already kind of bunch K to 5 together for when you're getting a curriculum. So 6 is already kind of an outlier there too. So it would be difficult to maybe get a K to 5 curriculum. Having 6th grade down there as well could pose a problem with that. So we talked as a table. Overall, we think pre-K to 5 and then keeping 6th grade up through 6 to 12 just makes the most sense for us at this time.
Questions?
If it's any consolation, like I totally flipped, when I was talking to this group, I totally flipped from where I was a month ago. And the reason why I totally flipped from where I was at was because I was purely looking at it from an athletic director standpoint. And from an athletic director standpoint, I would love for it to be 7-12. That's a nice clean cut. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just, you start off with your 7th grade sports, etc. But when you look at the band, when you look at the choir, and you look at the potential, I think the biggest concern that I have is that when you look at the junior and senior classes right now, even sophomores, you have so many more options to not be in the building in terms of whether you go to Buckeye, whether you take CCP classes, you got homeschoolers, you got QDA, you got basically 1,000 different places that you can go other than the school itself. Whereas the pre-K to 6th grade, you're either going to that building or you're not, I mean, there's no place else for you to go. So I think that if there is a growth spurt at all in the community at that level, you're gonna be, in my mind, if you don't do a really good job of planning, you're gonna be right back in the trailers again if you have any kind of growth at the elementary school. So that's kind of where I kind of was hedging more than anything else.
So in our meetings in March, we're gonna talk about what we call LFIs, locally funded initiatives. And right now, we're basing everything on those enrollment projections that we talked about last meeting, updated. And somebody, one of your tables brought up, room for growth. So we're gonna broach that topic. Do we need to build for a larger enrollment, room for growth, what you just mentioned, in our plan right now or not? So I don't want to think just because we're talking about where 6th grade goes that opportunity has left us to address that topic, because it hasn't. We will be talking in more detail about that next month. Okay. Can I have that?
All right, at our table, we had an 8th grade teacher and I teach high school, so we were kind of undecided. It doesn't really affect us personally, but we said it largely is gonna depend on space and size constraints. So like right now, if we have South is a pretty large location, but we're struggling to find large locations elsewhere, so perhaps we wanna put more at that large location, which might help us find a slightly smaller plot of land doing 7-12. That was kind of our thought, but again, depending on what we find as far as land goes, that can change. Because there are definitely smaller numbers in the upper grades for the reasons they stated, going to Kent and Buckeye, which is mostly 11-12, but does, make our building a bit smaller. As far as pros, we said, it is nice to give those 6th graders some recess space. They don't really have anywhere to let off any steam at the current location. We throw them outside on a little basketball court in a cage, which is just not great. And
on it, it's not
and I mean, well, my husband and I have returned from lunch before and had kids in the street, and we're trying to park our car. So
we know field too.
it's not great. We did talk about sports. They're not in school sports until 7 and 8. They're not usually taking upper level classes, so we do have 7th graders taking 8th grade classes, 8th graders taking high school classes. That crossover doesn't really happen with 6th graders. They're just not typically ready to be in those high school classes or moved there for any reason. And again, we talked about the teaching license currently being 4-9 to 7 and 7-12. The 7-12, that puts any of those teachers can teach any of those grades that are at that building, which could be very beneficial. Because we do have a couple of 4-9 licensures in the high school, and it always makes things a little complicated because they're legally not allowed to teach anyone who's labeled as a 10th grader, even if they're taking a 9th grade class. So you fail your 9th grade class, you have to take it again, but you're labeled a 10th grader, so you can't have that teacher. So it does make things complicated, and so we thought 7-12 licenses could be used more frequently in future hiring, and then they are covered for the whole building, and that's just really nice. Cons, we brought up the ideas of bullying and maturity. Where do they fit best? Where's there less or more, where is there less bullying? We don't really know. That's why there's question marks there. We're not really experienced with that age group, so we just thought if you want to think about those topics, great. We don't really have an opinion on them. It's just the only downsides we could come up with, so.
Did I hear you say that sixth graders don't usually interact or let me rephrase that. Seventh and eighth graders and above don't typically mentor the sixth graders? Is that what you were saying?
No, we have students who take, like advanced students, gifted students, as a seventh grader, might take an eighth grade class, and then as an eighth grader, they're in high school. We have.
Sixth grade to seventh as often.
But sixth grade to seventh doesn't really happen. Like I teach math, and we didn't do it this year, but a couple years ago, I had eighth graders in my geometry class, which is a 10th grade class. So they took Algebra 1, which is a high school class and falls under this, has to be taught by a 7-12 teacher because it's a high school Algebra 1 course. So we had 7th graders taking Algebra 1. We have 8th graders that then come all the way over to the high school to take geometry, a 10th grade class. But that doesn't really happen with 6th grade. They just take like a gifted course that's catered to them. But they're not really taking like a course for the next grade up.
Got it.
So they don't need to be there. We're not saying they can't be there. We need the 7th graders closer to the high school. We need the 8th graders to be able to be in the high school. We don't really have, 6th graders never come to my building, so.
Interesting. That was good information. Thank you. Oh, come on.
I'll read it. You want me to read it for you? I'll go.
Read Ricky's mind.
I can make it up.
That's right.
See, it would have been so easy.
Actually, you know, we did have a few opinions, but for the most part, we felt like these are decisions that we're not supposed to make. We're supposed to have opinions, but educational experts, and I would poll the 5th grade teachers, the 6th grade teachers, and, you know, talk to middle school people, you know. And we talked like, one of the things, if you're a parent and your child's getting ready to go to the 6th grade, that's kind of a rite of passage right now. You know, I mean, I guess we'd change back to 7th grade if that was the case. But that was kind of our lack of knowledge. Didn't want us to like give some opinion. Thank you.
So he did hit the nail on the head. The whole point of this was to garnish
The
feedback.
nail on the head.
Yes.
I mean,
But ultimately, it is the administration's decision on this, but, you know, it's been a topic that's, you know, been brought up a couple times, so we did want to focus a meeting on getting your feedback on it, so.
I will
All right,
say that I
now-
talked to a couple sixth grade teachers, and they said they would prefer the 6th graders stay in the middle school and not do it on the elementary. And they're the ones teaching them, so.
I wanted to mention something about bullying, you know, that whole idea of the kids, should the older kids be with someone? And, in our building in the middle school, and I suppose this could work in any, you know, wherever the 6th graders are, or however the elementary works, just so everybody knows that, like, the 8th graders, I don't even, see the other, 7th and 6th grade teachers. I see them early. Like, the 8th graders have their own area, the 7th graders have their space, the 6th graders have their space. We all have different lunch periods, so they're not all out, you know, on the playground together. And, they really don't intermingle very much, so, you know, I don't know if that's an issue for either way, wherever this is.
there are situations.
Okay, would you, Ms. Gable?
Yeah. It's pretty humorous because, referring to Mr. Neff again, he went right down our list when he started. We talked, first thing, when we sat down at the table, we all just unanimously looked at each other and said, well, we think the 6th grade should be in elementary school. And it was just a unanimous thing right away. We talked about the social aspect, and I went over and talked to Ricky about the fact that, you know, that's where he got my, it was just Monday. This little 7th or 6th grade clarinet player was, we were ending class and they were, you know, talking to a little group, and I walked in, what are you guys talking about? They're like, oh, we're just scared about the dance. I'm like, how are you scared of a dance? You know, and they were just talking about, well, there's gonna be 7th, 8th graders there. And I just use that as an example of the social aspect of, you know, not to say that the middle school dance is a terrifying thing, unless you're a sixth grade.
It's a lot of fun if anybody wants to.
Yeah. He's looking for, he's looking for chaperone. Absolutely. And somebody smarter than me at the table brought up the easier to staff with certifications. It was not me. Because again, he said something about old school certificates. I think mine says K to 12. I'm not even making that up. I think it says music K to 12 from 1990. Sports, we talked about that. That's all been covered. Developmental, physical and emotional, like I talked about. I taught here in 90. I think, to answer you, I think it was in the mid-90s somewhere. I forget exactly where it was. And it was facility oriented. The elementary schools were just buried in children. Like I was doing band, I remember at East Elementary, I didn't even know it was a downstairs, but like downstairs beside the room where the heater is, and when that thing kicked on in the winter, we had no idea, we couldn't hear, all fall was good, and all of a sudden it got to winter time, and it was like, oh, I can't hear a thing. We had to move where we were, we had to go to the library. But anyhow, 5th and 6th grade were in the elementary schools when I started teaching, and just in my little band world, I know that physically, there's a big difference between a 6th grade kid and a 7th grade kid, just with an instrument, just in my world. The physical development of a child, a 7th grade student can play completely different literature than a 6th grade student. And 5th and 6th grade kids are pretty much similar in their physical development. And I talked about that a little bit. And then they were talking about, again, someone smarter than I am, was talking about the emotional development of the kids and those kind of things, and how we have a teacher at the table who taught in a district where they did alter the grading in 5 to 7, and then they moved it here, and 6th grade was always that odd grade, and it is, and you've brought that up too, that 6th grade is just this thing in the middle. But we, as a table, because of all these reasons, thought that the 6th grade should be in elementary school. So that's where we came from. Yes, Mr. Fortney.
Yeah, so explain to me how band works at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. How does that, like,
Well,
band
there's a
choir?
clarinet.
I know that. I'm talking about in terms of like band choir, like all the things that you guys do. Do you not include 6th graders with you at all in the middle school band?
Currently,
So how would that work?
well, let me tell you, it's a great example. The 6th grade, when we brought them up, we had to figure out a concert for them. They aren't on, this, again, just in the music world, 7th and 8th grade band has a concert night, 6th grade has a separate. 7th and 8th grade choir has a concert night. The 6th grade choir and the 6th grade band have their own night together. First of all, it's space. Our auditorium's too small. If you had 6, 7, 8, there'd be we already packed that auditorium in the first place. And if you put all 3 grade levels in there at the same time, you'd have people really upset because they couldn't see their kid. But we did it, again, for that, but when I first taught, like at the elementary schools, every elementary school had their own 5th grade. The 5th and 6th grade bands did a concert at that elementary school. And that was the night, we did one at East, we did one at South, we did one at, there used to be a building called Tusk. We did one at Tusk. We did one at all the schools. So they were included like that, and the choirs usually sang on those. So right now, it's 6th grade by itself, and then 7th and 8th grade do their things. So they've never really been incorporated into those.
That's strictly because of space of the auditorium?
Space of the
auditorium, would you include them all?
If we had a bigger auditorium, would we include them all? Possibly. For the band, this isn't choir, but for the band in the spring we do. We do a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band concert, but it's in the high school gym. And so we already kind of do that at the end of the year. So yeah, I would say we would. You know what I mean?
But your 7th and 8th grade are playing separately.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band.
No, there's a 6th grade band, a 7th grade band, and an 8th grade band, right. Yeah.
So they all work independently right now?
Yes.
How does that work? So, I mean, I know I don't mean to be like,
No,
so if they went to the 6th grade, then that would just, whoever was teaching 6th grade band would now take that at the elementary building, would leave the middle school?
Well, what we used to do is the elementary bands were in a time, like the whole staff was at the middle school, high school for 1st and 2nd period. And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 was a block of time where we could go out to the elementary schools and teach those.
So you guys would have to travel.
Right, and then we came back for the end of the day for the high school. That's the way it was.
Okay.
I have another question for you. Would
Sure.
moving sixth grade give you the opportunity to let fifth graders be in band again? Because that's pretty much died, right? Like I took fifth grade band with you,
Yes, you did.
but
This is a while ago.
but you know, I feel like our fifth graders have kind of been left out. And now if you're gonna have to go over there to do sixth grade, now maybe you could include fifth graders again
Right.
because you're going to that building anyway, and by consolidating them from multiple buildings to one, now you can say, hey, we're gonna have band for fifth and sixth grade instead of just for sixth grade.
Right.
So we might be able to include more kids in the program.
Yep, we've had conversations for the last few years, and when the fifth graders got to Central, the reality became a real possibility to be able to staff it and take it. Because I will just say it right now, because I taught in both systems, losing the fifth grade band was the worst thing to happen to our band program, bar none. Our band today does not play like the high school band, I'm saying, doesn't play the way the 1999 high school band did. We can't play the literature, and it comes from not having that 1 year earlier start, and it's just that simple. And that's something that the program we just had to deal with, right? We didn't have a say, it just was gone, and it ended. And that was a staffing thing and a whole bunch of reasons, but it is the worst thing that's happened to me. So yes, that's my long answer to say yes. Absolutely, we would jump back into fifth grade with band, absolutely. Some schools even have fourth grade band.
And you could.
But that's a whole different conversation. So there you go, that's our.
All right.
Keep growing.
I know. Okay. Okay, so since I drew this, I felt like I had to come up and explain it. It has nothing to do with this conversation at all. We did feel unanimously at our table that we are not qualified to make these decisions. You guys are who need to make that decision. So whatever you guys think is best. I will say, I do believe it was a year or two ago that I sat, I think it was right over here. I asked that question, why is our sixth graders in the middle school? And I believe at the time, the answer is for everything we talked about, the pros is that, you know, for the education, a lot of kids are taking gifted classes. Two, yes, immaturity, sixth graders to, you know, eighth graders. But I think of the downside is that I don't want my sixth grader teaching a kindergartner or something. You know what I mean? In a negative way, I guess. So I guess from that standpoint, the crazy things that sixth graders do also impact what the younger ones do as well. So just another side of that too. So, but hey, whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. So
Wait,
this was just a picture. I was trying to draw south, and then this was the high school, and I knew my husband would be embarrassed.
Okay.
One thing more on the sixth grade topic, just I'm the only scoutmaster in New Philly anymore, so I do scouts. Scouts for 100 years has a program for elementary school kids and then a program for high school kids, basically 7 through 12. The cutoff is fifth grade. So we moved the fifth graders to the scout program and then put a 15-year-old in charge of them at a camp out, set up for 10, I'm over drinking my coffee every week. So that's been that way for 100 years. So just food for thought. Doesn't really have anything to do with education, but it's worked.
Where did the sixth graders fit in your program now?
They become members immediately. The 15-year-olds mentor the sixth graders, and the sixth graders start learning immediately.
They're in with the high school.
They're in with the high schoolers. Yes, they're in with 17-year-olds. Now, we try to get them, people closer to their age, because that's what they want, right? But you, the person in charge is a 15 or 16-year-old.
All right, great job, everybody. Look at this time. Oh, question. Oh, hands everywhere. Go ahead.
You know, I asked the old dumb box here that, there's literally a 24-page document on the pros and cons and differences of having a sixth grader at the elementary level compared to the or to the middle school level. And just to give one thing off here, first off, it's from the National Bureau of Economic Research. They said the number of infractions per student between middle school and elementary schools, there were 47 reported infractions for every 100 sixth graders attending middle school, compared with only 16 per 100 in elementary schools. So that's just based on infractions. That's one thing.
Yeah,
I
one
would
layer.
argue.
There was,
But that's out of that 24-page document. So if you want to get on the Google Docs, it's on there.
What is that data?
Disciplinary infraction.
On sixth graders?
Yes,
Right.
you have more of them if there were.
Were those sixth graders in middle school or elementary?
So the 47, there's 47 reported infractions per 100 students attending middle school. There's only 16 per 100 when they're at elementary.
If I just might, this may just an opinion, I realize this is my first meeting, but, and I don't have this answer, I would love for teachers or somebody to maybe, if there's data on this, but I think we're significantly discounting the social pressures that our kids face today. And it's okay that their kids a little longer. I know that's allegory, I know that's like, I can't put my finger on that data, but I raised 3 kids, and I know that seeing their mental health in sixth grade be pressured the way it is in middle school, we have to admit middle school's significantly higher pressure socially. And I understand there's education reasons to do it, there's licensing reasons to do it, or not do it, but I just don't think we're giving enough credit, and several of your groups put it as maybe your 1 or 2 of the social differences. And I would say there's some sixth graders that can absolutely move on and handle it and be very mature. But I would guess there's the vast majority that cannot and are really struggling. I think the fact that most kids are on some kind of antidepressant is an indicator of that. Again, I can't point to the data, I can't point to the studies at this point. I would just comment that I think we are not giving enough, we as a society, not this group. There is a significant amount that we're missing as to what's happening in our culture. And this sixth grade, seventh grade is not the problem. It's one of many, obviously, but I think we just need to pay attention to that maybe more than maybe our culture is allowing
I'd like to think about too, I feel like we've already said, should they be 7 through 12 or should they be PK through 6, how is that gonna go? But it would be nice if we had a campus that we could have different spaces for 7 through 12 and, then maybe just have a 4 to 6 wing or 5 and 6, and then you have the kids that are more like each other socially and,
It's very common.
Instead of saying, well, do we want 6th graders with kindergartners, or do we want 6th graders with, high schoolers? Do we have to choose between those 2 things, or can we have like a middle grade, where they would be 4, 5, 6, or just 5, 6? I don't want to have to choose between those. Yeah. I mean, do we have to discount that opportunity there?
Well, by the end of April, we do need to define the building grade configurations. They have a different cost impact. You saw the delta between the different plans that we looked at, and the less schools that are bigger are the most cost effective. Site implications come into play and so forth. So ultimately, yes, we do have to make that decision. And so far, the majority of the feedback.
It might depend on like our location opportunities and other things like
Right,
that,
that's-
so we maybe can choose.
But we
to
could
put that
still, if we,
not-
yes, but if we still have, let's say, a PK 6 school, it still can be designed
Yeah.
where they are actually functioning
Yeah.
and as separate schools.
Right.
By space, by
Yeah.
form, I mean, you can still create schools within schools,
Yeah.
very easily.
In either configuration, you'd be able to put them together with the grades that were most similar to them. It's just how you organize the building.
And in 10 years, when the census has changed, they'll move it anyway.
If I hear you correctly, the question that was posed was sixth grade in middle school or sixth grade in elementary? And if I hear you correctly, should we be analyzing, especially with our site constraints, a K through 3 building and a 4 through 6 building? Is that what you were going with?
Yes.
Well, I guess,
I
it
think that's
depends on what our,
So
we
we-
don't know what our.
Is this your first time?
Uh,
Okay, so we have analyzed that and reviewed it. It was on the report at the beginning. And even in the very beginning where I showed you the data, that was, I believe that was one of the plans, if not at the previous meeting. And it had, in terms of this group, had very little consensus to move forward with it compared to this plan.
But I think that was prior to the discussion of sixth going to middle school or sixth going to elementary. If there was a way to read.
Yeah.
I just think that if you build this elementary building, and if you're gonna put sixth graders in it, you're gonna have wings. And they're gonna be separate. Even though they might be in that building, they're not gonna be usually, I mean, we have that now. Like Kira said, it's even at the middle school, they don't, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of pressures and you're gonna see those kids, but I mean, if you're gonna put an elementary building, you look at most elementary buildings that are built in this day and age, there's wings. And so.
So let's consider that.
And, well, I mean, but that's in one building.
Yeah.
So make it a wing, make different wings, I guess, if that's what you're talking
You
about.
could even have separate offices,
Yeah, I mean,
entrances,
I
all of
don't-
that is drop-off zones. I mean, there's so many possibilities that are actually really common in large school design.
Right, so the CPA question, does the influx of like 250 kids in this building versus this building change anything dramatically?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. So the cost models for elementary, middle, and high school are different. But for all 3 grades, because like high school has science, it has other programs that elementary school doesn't have. So the cost per square foot is higher. So when we put more students in a high school grade configuration or a middle high school grade configuration, it might cost a little bit more than if that 6th grade was pushed in elementary school, but not dramatically. But it does have a little bit of an impact.
Are you any closer to the answer that you were looking for?
No comment.
Aside from money, is there any difference with space?
Yeah, same thing. So that's a really good question. So elementary school students, it's a sliding scale for all students, but it starts off at about 125 square foot per student in elementary school level. As you move up to middle school level, it starts off at about 140, I think, somewhere around there. And then high school around 165 square foot per student. Square foot translates to $1 per square foot, so it does have an impact, yes. So again, the cheapest, the most fiscally responsible models or cost-effective model are bigger schools rather than smaller schools. The smaller the building, the more it costs per square foot. It's economies of scale.
And is there a scale for if the building is X square foot, then the land it's on has to be?
There's recommendations. We're gonna post that online. It's not mandated, but there is, and it, again, separated by elementary, middle, and high. Elementary needing the least amount. Elementary, I know that one by heart, it's 10 base acres for elementary school students plus 1 acre per 100 students. So if you have 400 students, they're recommending 14 acres. It's a recommendation. Claire, you can speak to what we've done in Cleveland on 5 acres.
Yeah. No, it's a recommendation and it accounts for like the high school acreage that it recommends is accounting for all the athletic fields being on the same site as the high school.
Much
So you
bigger,
have to
much
kind of
bigger.
keep that in mind as you look at what those recommendations are.
And in South, we have what, 15 acres?
I can't remember the exact number, but
I guess just where I was going with that is I think like the second hot button issue behind actually passing a levy is the space available in this town. And so like last week, the gentleman came and he did that little thing. There is none. And so I think from my standpoint is whatever we can make work to fit in the space that we have. So if that's putting the sixth grade down south, if that's putting the sixth grade, I think that's more of a, that dictates more than what anything else, anything of what we think. Because I just, the community's only gonna support so much. We're not gonna support tearing down a bunch of houses. We went through that before. We don't have a bunch of land.
So 10-acre elementary campus, assuming a single story. Instead of one.
Pretty good, yeah. I mean, it doesn't go into that specifics, really. It's
I think, I'm with you, tracking is important. That's true. So if the challenge is finding a suitable site, it's hard for me to look past South and Central and go, there's excess land. You don't have to spend $1 and you can build it.
I think we have two more questions real quick.
Kind of just off there. Now we're talking about land size. What about building up? Like the elementary, like Central, it's a 2-story school. Middle school, high school is a 3-story school. So if, let's say, we have to go with a smaller-ish property, why don't we just go up? Because a lot of the bigger cities, they're up. They're not out, they're up. Like Tuscaloosa, I say that in different cases because they are built in the countryside. They're built kind of, they're country districts. We're building for a city district. So why don't we explore up instead of out?
Yeah, and a lot of the Cleveland schools that we mentioned, where they're on tighter sites, they do build up. The highest they've gone is 4 stories. And the thing that you have to be, I guess, kind of aware of with the going up is there's a limited number of spaces that can actually stack.
Yeah.
Like you get your gyms, you get the big music rooms, auditorium spaces, you can't really stack those.
Yeah.
So you're really only limited to that academic wing. So the smaller school gets, the less you can actually go up, just because there's not that much to go up.
Yeah.
Without having a lot of space to get on top of other functions.
Josh did state he was looking at 2-story in his test models last week that were presented. The academic portions were 2-story.
Okay.
Yeah.
They built a massive auditorium, but they still built a 3-story building around the
Yeah.
auditorium.
Yeah, 3 is not uncommon for us to go up to. 4 is as tall as I've seen us go at least.
And in an elementary school, it's not usually favored to go that high.
Yeah.
It's not, like we are a town, we aren't like a city, there's lots of outlying land around New Philly that I don't think we've looked into yet. That I don't know how people would be interested in selling to, their schools. But, and, yeah, I mean, there are spaces, our town is not big, we have lots of farmland around the town that I think, possibly as we move on, we'll be able to maybe check into those things. So I don't think we have to
Do we right now need to say, hey, we can only look at the places where we are, like where the school already owns? Yeah, we don't have to do that yet, right?
No, I mean, that's why last meeting we started talking about other sites and you gave us additional feedback beyond what we had already looked into, and we're still looking in some more, even since that last meeting. So that's why I said it's still going on behind the scenes. We just needed to get your initial input. So we're gonna revisit that topic here within next month.
And then I also was thinking, I think I mentioned this before, some schools in South area is really a great location. It's a great location for homes to be built too. And do we have the chance to sell that land for a high price to be able to buy some land where we want more space? So I don't know.
Kind of going off her a little bit, so I agree with the areas kind of outside of the city. So I work for the county's 911 center, so I look at the maps of the county a lot. I agree there's a lot of open land around the southeast, south side of New Philly, more towards the east, southeast side, out in Myrtle. So also going back to when I was in school, I was a single mom, agrees with me, and I walked to school every day. I was just within that threshold at the time. The district was you have to live a mile or more away from your building to get busing. I lived 0.95 miles away from my building, Central High School. So that's what I did. I walked to school every morning, walked home every afternoon. But the issue is, yeah, but then we're kind of reaching into the transportation side. If we're in kind of out of the city, more kids getting bused. Again, that's being put for Amy and transportation department down the road. How's our busing looking at the moment compared to if we build, let's say, out commercial about 416? How's our busing looking for the kids on the north side of the city that right now kind of walk to their schools?
Another layer we're gonna get to. And we will broach that topic too. So, with that being said, next steps, I mentioned in the beginning, we're gonna send out homework about polling, just to memorialize everything that we talked about today so that the public can see the actual data in the spirit of transparency. Our next meeting is February 21st, 6:30 p.m. Right now, we may focus on segmenting, but we're going to start talking about financial capabilities. We have to talk about LFIs. Not sure which the order will happen, but these are going to be more serious, tough topics as we're moving forward to the completion of this master plan. We'll, again, I listed our next steps from February to April, the same as the previous meetings, with the ultimate goal by the beginning of April to have a final plan or a segmented plan, meaning piece or part. But we are getting there. We are making progress. New people, you have the card. If you didn't grab one, it's up here at the front, and please sign in with your name and email address. But here you can see the school district's website. You go up here at the top of the tab. There's a link to the facilities page. Every meeting we're recording. There's photos, there's summary, all the data that we started with in the beginning. It's a plethora of it, enrollment projections, stats, all that is up there. That was the foundation to start this process. So you can get up to speed. Also, you can reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to take the time to talk to you and bring you up to speed on the progress we've made. Any closing comments?
With that, thank you again so much for attending, for your participation. Come back, bring the others with you. Like I said, the meetings are really going to, we're going to start diving into the financials and trying to nail down where we want to put these buildings or what we're going to do with that. So come back, next meeting in 2 weeks on Wednesday. So see you then.
Thank you.
Is this a new easel?
Yeah.
It's so nice.
I know. Look at it. I know. I was got a little thing. No.